I turned 38,000 in stock into 61,000 in home equity in one transaction. This is me getting my second property at the age of 25. Hey guys, it's Kerry, and in my last episode, I told you about how $125 a month for a financial advisor changed how I view my taxes, about my money itself, and about funding my businesses in the future. This week, I'm going to go ahead and go over about how I bought new construction for $375,000, even though the home appraised for $424,000, and how I funded the whole thing from a bonus at my job, as well as I'll break down the RSU strategy and why I targeted new construction to lock in a better interest rate, and what I learned from my first property, as well as how a casual conversation I had at the property with somebody that I didn't think a whole lot about ended up changing my trajectory when it comes to my future. To go ahead and get into it, I want to explain what RSUs are. So RSUs are restricted stock units, and this is basically stock that you get from your company that vests over time. So vesting means that you're not able to sell it until a certain time. Vesting in itself actually means that the stock that you had is actually yours and you're able to sell or keep it or hold it or whatever you want to do. But if you leave the job, you keep that with you. Anything that's not vested is stock that goes back to the company whenever you leave the company because you didn't meet the terms that are required for the stock to become yours or vest. So I really think of it as like a delayed bonus in a sense, because it is something that's granted to me every year when they review my salary, and it typically vests at the earliest 6 months, but it's different time variations that it could vest. But it's an incentive for me to work hard to stay at my company and to keep the company value up, so that whenever I sell the stock and it becomes mine, that I can keep the value high and be able to actually earn more than when they vested it originally. So they ended up vesting me in February of 2025 with 1,001 shares of Chewy at a stock price of $37.98 a share. And then I also had some shares in January as well. I had 37 shares there. So when I ended up selling these and paying taxes, because the way my company works is when we get granted the stock, they automatically sell some to pay off your taxes so you don't end up with a huge tax bill later on. And this ended up netting me $38,682.26 going into my bank account for me being able to fund this home. And it was interesting because when I got this lump sum and I knew it was coming, I was living in my first property. I just spent the $84,000 to upgrade it, and I got this huge lump sum. So I could just keep this lump sum in the stock, right? But the stock that I'm getting from my company, they give me more and more every year. So I don't want to have all of my assets more and more concentrated into my company. So I decided I wanted to diversify. And to me, real estate at this time, or at that time, since 2025, is still a good place to get into. And it would be another way to have my money be leveraged for me. So I went ahead and took some of this lump sum and went ahead and bought a new construction. So getting into new construction was just based off of a few reasons. So for me, at this time, interest rates are still high. And when interest rates are high, that's going to lower the buyer demand. I can see this opportunity because the home prices are not going to continue to go up and up and up. And eventually, when we do lower the price, not the prices, but lower the interest rates on the homes, we will be able to see again that the prices increase. But if I'm able to lock in a home before that happens, then I can continue on the upside as the value of the homes increase because the interest rates have fell. This wasn't to really put me in a rush, but it was one of the things that I was like, if I had the opportunity, why not take it? And it's another way for me to continue to have income because it'll be able to be rented and I get to have the appreciation of the home value over time. The other thing that I learned recently as well is with the home being in new construction, we actually have another advantage. And that other advantage is that builders often have affiliated lenders in which they're able to lower interest rates to be able to sell homes. So it was interesting looking at it because if I went to grab another home, another used home in 2025, I would have been looking around 6 to 7% in the mortgage rate. compared to like looking at the actual new homes, and I saw interest rates under 5%. And that right there, like that 1 to 2% spread saves you hundreds a month on just interest alone. And that is something that I want to be able to take advantage of while we are dealing with this economy and where we have the mortgage rates are super high and home prices are right there with it. On to finding the home itself. We ended up landing in Forney, and for Forney, it seemed like a great opportunity for us because one, there was a lot of new construction out there. It's a good bang for your buck. I'm literally recording in the house right now, and it is a 3-bedroom house. Also got an office, also got 2.5 baths with a attached garage as well. And the other thing that we wanted to also consider is that it's a walkable area, and we have a hospital along with the HEB. And for those who don't know, HEB is a pretty big deal. Next to is one of the best grocery stores in Texas, honestly. And it was just nice to know that that was coming. When we bought the home at that time, we didn't know that we knew it was coming, but it wasn't completed. But it completed a few weeks ago, and it's been great to be in there ever since. I'm just saying it as a fan right now. But getting back to the video, the other good part about it was the builder that we were working with, Ashton Woods, is a pretty reputable builder, and they have done several places actually around Texas, in Houston and DFW area, and several other places as well. And it was nice to have a new construction home that was just finishing up. This home was being finished up less than probably 2 months of us like talking with the builder and getting the home actually closed and sold. The details on the deal of the home came down to $375,000 on the sales price. $424,000 came back on the appraisal. So right there, there's $49,000 in equity right off the bat that I would be able to borrow from. And the lender ended up being Velocity Mortgage, which is highly affiliated with Ashton Woods. The interest rate was 4.99%, which is great because my home that I was living in at the time was 6.375. The down payment ended up being $18,750, and the mortgage after closing and everything settled ended up being $362,400. So I also got $10,000 in sales credits from the seller, and what that means is the seller put $10,000 towards the closing cost of the home, and the cash that it took me to close was around $17,364, and the RSUs that we talked about earlier was around $38,000. So that was more than enough to cover it, and I was able to use the remaining around $20,000 or so to really put towards my emergency fund, but also to help me with moving expenses as well. RSUs were really, like, to me, it was a no-brainer once again, because I'm able to boost up my emergency funds and be able to come into a house and having equity right off the bat. And it was something that was just really great for me to be able to use once again. And as far as the monthly payment details, so the principal and interest were $1,943.68. The mortgage insurance was around $147 a month. So the way that the mortgage insurance works is, because I did not put 20% down, you're required to get more private mortgage insurance, or PMI, from some companies. Navy Federal doesn't do it, but because I wanted to go with the builder financing in-house, I had to go ahead and go with this option because I didn't want to put 20% down. So with that being the case, that is one part of it. But to me, even when you add all this together, it's still less than what I was paying in the rental property. So the rest of the numbers are actually going to be the taxes and insurance together. So that's part of the escrow, which is just an account that your bank has on your mortgage, which pays the taxes and insurance, and that together was $630. So the total mortgage was $2,721, and it's slightly less than what I was paying in my first property, but at the same time, I got a lot more house in a nicer neighborhood, and it was just nice to really just be able to see how much of a difference that makes based off of what I can get. Comparing the two properties, the first property, or my rental property, comes out at $330,000 on how much it costs, 6.375% on the interest rate, when I went ahead and spent $84,000 to upgrade it, compared to this property now that I'm recording in is $375,000, 4.99% interest rate, and move-in ready. No major upgrades really needed, and I'm saving, hundreds a month compared to if I would have had the same interest rate as my rental home on this home. I want to go ahead and cover moving out of the rental and moving into this property and just the logistics behind it so you can have a complete picture. I ended up closing on this property in March of 2025, and I really ended up moving into this property pretty much right after I closed, because the whole plan of the rental property was to make it a rental property, even though I was living in it at the time. And if you watch the rental reality episode, you know that the rental property was listed for rent in mid to late January of 2025, and the tenant ended up moving in actually March 29th of 2025. So this was almost a perfectly timed switch. I get out the house, I have the tenant move in a few weeks after I move out, and almost no downtime between. So it was nice to just really have that transition happen smoothly. Thankfully for my property manager that really helped make that transition seamless. And then I'm moving into this brand new home, right? I don't really have to worry about, oh, I know that I gotta go replace the toilets, replace the doors, or I gotta go and get the yard fixed or anything like that. It's nice having a brand new home and not really having to do anything besides minor things. And after spending time, like a year and a half, upgrading the rental property, it was nice to just be able to not have any big purchases that I'm thinking of right off the bat, and just come in and live. The other things that I kind of went and did, obviously just because of moving, it's like getting the utilities switched over. Because I drive an electric vehicle, I went ahead and got the plug installed in the garage as well. And that's where things ended up taking a turn for me that I'll get into later. But one of the few things that I wanted to talk about as well is the lessons from the first property, right? So this time around, I wanted to do small quality of life improvements, like the EV plug I just mentioned, adding ceiling fans throughout the house because they purposely did not include them because they knew people were going to replace them. And then I also did another small thing and installed a little electrical outlet on the other side of the island because for whatever reason, it doesn't have power there. It's really weird, but whatever. So those are the small things that I did, nothing major, and just trying to make sure to not really wrap myself up in trying to do major upgrades for a home that's already pretty decently competitive. The one mistake I did make in this home, because there's always lessons, right, is I was talking with my neighbor and I got to see my neighbor's house, and it was just gorgeous house. Porcelain floors, they had fountains in their living room, and it just was really gorgeous interior. The kitchen was also upgraded with a way to be able to have water to pour in their pots over the stove. And it was just a really beautiful home. And I was just getting to know them and telling them, hey, we're about to redo some things in our house. We want to upgrade the bathroom upstairs. We want to go ahead and upgrade the flower bed because the flower bed doesn't have any retaining wall. So I don't want the grass running into the flower bed or stuff like that. So when I talked with him, he was like, oh, well, I can go ahead and get the flower bed done. My uncle does pretty good work for the landscaping. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll give him a try. And it's unfortunate, but 40% through the project, we were looking and it was just we don't really like the way the wall is coming out. And then on top of that, when we were trying to tell them about it, they was like, okay, we could just push the stones together. I was like, dude, you cut them wrong. There's not really much you can do about that. And after a while, we was just you know what? Y'all can just leave it as is. We'll get it fixed later. And honestly, it's still like that to this day because I have been prioritizing other things since. And it was a small thing to where obviously I lost a little bit of money but probably I would say about 40 to 50% of the cost. I think it was around $2,000 that I ended up losing $1,000 of it because obviously they did do some labor. It was one of the lessons that I just learned right away is that just because you see somebody does work in one particular area very well does not mean that you shouldn't ask for work in other areas. So it was just a quick lesson for me. The real big lesson that I learned from the rental property though was that I do not want to deal with solar on rental properties. I'd rather have it on a property that I live in. And it's just for a few reasons. One, we have to couple electricity into the lease because now I need to find a way to be able to make that money off of the grid. And I need to be able to charge for essentially buying electricity because if you really think about it, solar panels are saying I'm going to go ahead and buy my electricity by being able to generate my own, and that costs money, so I have to pass it on to the tenant. So that in itself is a little complicated. But I even went further to get the power walls, and the power walls themselves is a way to store energy from solar that's excess energy from the sun. You get to store it into your battery so you can use it at night. And that piece of equipment has a weird requirement on the warranty where it has to be connected to Wi-Fi so we can do updates. If it's not able to do updates, that could possibly void the warranty, which is like a crazy thing to think about because it doesn't sound like anything when you live there, because who's not gonna have internet when you're a tenant? When you move, the Wi-Fi is most likely going to change. So now I have to have the Wi-Fi actually be on by me so I can ensure that the power walls are always connected to the internet. And it was just a real hassle because there's that. And I also told you guys about the overage as well. So I need to also be able to prove and show them proof of how much they went over, and then work with my property manager to actually charge them the overage on electricity. And even though I was able to be good in the long run financially, it's just not worth the financial headache for the little bit of extra equity I get off of that. So it was just very interesting to really go through that experience, and glad the numbers worked out, but I don't think I really want the logistics nightmare of that again. The other thing I'll say is, like, I had smart lights in the home because I just like automation. As an engineer, being able to automate things is also always awesome to me. And the only thing is, like, I went for cheap lights for the automation because it's like, why be super expensive? And these cheap lights, I didn't think about it, but they didn't necessarily function normally if they were not connected to a hub. So they would blink 3 times whenever you turn the light on if they're not synced to a hub. Not everybody wants to have a hub connecting all their lights together and different things like that. So it was like, I don't want to have any of that confusion either. So when I got the ceiling fans installed, I made sure that they were able to run without a hub and that you would not be able to tell the difference with or without it. And the other thing I did is to make sure, like, if I do any upgrades, I want them to be very simple. That way that when I move out, whoever moves in as a tenant doesn't have to deal with any of the features that I particularly like, because not everybody wants to deal with that. People just want to be able to live in a home. The last thing I will also say, it's not really a lesson learned, but it's just a tip that I want to also highlight, is that with new construction, you typically have a builder's warranty, and a builder's warranty for a lot of things expires after that first year. So you want to be able to report anything that you see, like, immediately. For me, there was a sprinkler head that was broken and causing a leak in the grass, so I had them come out and fix that. There's a pipe washout that bursted, so I had them fix that. There's a garage trim on the door that was moving over, I had to fix that. And from a home inspection as well, the garage door didn't go all the way up when you did the emergency release, so we had to fix that. And thankfully they did, because the power went out before, and if we didn't get it fixed, I would not have been able to get either one of our cars out of the garage. It would have been that. So this is the real advice about this one, is just to make sure that you are actually on top of that, because once that gear's up, now it's on you to fix it. And you don't want to be looking up like, oh, if I would have said something a month earlier, I could have got it fixed for free. Now back to me getting my plug installed in the garage. So when I got my plug installed in the garage in this home, I was talking with the electrician. He's done plenty of work for me. He's done the ceiling fans here. He's done the outlet on the island, and obviously he did the plug. And as I was talking with him this time about it, he said he had told me, like, hey, I was curious if you still coded and all this stuff for your job at work. And I was like, yeah, I do. He's like, okay, cool. Well, my boss was looking for somebody to redo our internal app that we use for the field techs. And I was like, okay, cool. It sounds like a good idea. And I ended up meeting with his boss about it. And that client, I'm not even gonna say client, I got ahead of myself, but that meeting ended up getting me a contract, and that contract ended up getting me a client that's paying me $3,000 a month on being able to do development work for that app. I'll get more into depth on what this transpired into, and you guys can kind of see what I'm doing for this client and just kind of go a little bit more in depth on the next episode. But as usual, I appreciate you for watching. I'm just curious, for people who have their bonuses, or even other people who get RSUs, would you invest in real estate? Would you go into stocks, or would you do something else, or just translate it into cash? I just want to know your thoughts and how you would have done things differently if you were in my position. As usual, I'll see you guys next week. This is Mickens Financial Journey, and I'll see y'all later. Peace.